Hi, my name's Peyton Atkins. This is my brother Josh Atkins. We're going to be talking about The Passion of Joan of Arc today. This is a 1928 silent film, and I've actually never seen a silent film, nor have I really heard about the Joan of Arc story, so all this was very new to me. What do you think about it being a silent movie?
I just watched. I don't know if the class is familiar with Hundreds of Beavers. So it's a modern silent film, kind of more in the. And I guess I'd go ahead and say that also I've only seen like Chaplin and kind of comedy-esque silent stuff, and never anything full other than that one that came out in 2024.
Okay.
So as far as like a drama or a tragedy built on the silent film movement, it was interesting. Like a little bit slower than watching people fall over. And
it being a 1928 film too, I'm sure. It's 96 years ago. It's crazy to think. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get into talking about the events that took place in the film, and the intro scene is immediately, you can tell there's a lot of fast takes and it's very chaotic from the beginning, and it's a lot of up close pictures of Joanne and her facial expressions and her reacting to being on trial for what would you call that,
I guess blasphemy, right?
Blasphemy, religious persecution.
Which is, I think, the kind of part of the historic story that's interesting. I think maybe you mentioned it, or somebody else that was watching with us mentioned that it was kind of the first witch trial in a way, because she really didn't have, essentially it was like a political persecution that they used religion.
That's what I was going to mention, that you can tell later on in the movie that it's a lot more political because it's about the French-English War, medieval times.
This French revolutionary, said she was brought by God, so the English church seems to essentially have used that against her, like, no, you weren't brought by God, so if you say that, we'll kill you.
And immediately you can tell in this first opening scene that the majority of the men that are holding the trial against her do not like her, but there's one man that you can tell is certainly on her side, and either he likes her just because she's a prophet type figure.
I think he says when she fights for the third time that she won't change out of her men's clothes, says I think she's a prophet. Like everybody else is like she's a blasphemer, and she's like, I think this conviction is true. And I think it just shows that at the time that the English church was more interested in power than they were actually believing in the faith.
So in this scene we see it starts to get serious, and they ask the guards to leave, so it's just the noblemen in there speaking to her. They talk about they talk about what she thinks about God and her viewpoints and stuff, and they basically come to the point that she's blasphemous, that she's Satan leads her, not God, and eventually they declare her that she's blasphemous.
Satan. She's led by Satan. And that's pretty much the plot, man. Like it's very simple in terms of the structure. And if you know anything about the story, you probably know that the trial and that she was burned at stake. That to me it's a simple story. I think that what this is, historical for is I can't imagine anybody thinking about that camera work. Because it's stuff that I get excited about. Like I think I mentioned Ari Aster shots because. I think Midsummer and a couple times in Hereditary you get this pan overhead.
And I've seen those movies, so I can definitely relate to that.
A lot of snap zooms where you almost have a full close up of one of the holy men's face, and then you can tell he's mad and kind of says something spiteful, and it zooms even closer, almost right on his mouth. And that's stuff that I felt like if I watch an 80s movie, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting camera work.
And it's definitely hard to, in the movie, it's definitely hard to, at least I felt just being engaged the entire time, which is a movie you have to be engaged for unless you don't understand, unless then you will not understand what's happening in the movie. But it was just kind of hard to I guess my modern mind is kind of getting outtracked by the fast pacedness of it and no talking. But overall, I thought it was a good movie, and it definitely had emotion in it, especially lady that was playing Joan of Arc.
Yeah, she was great. I kind of maybe didn't filter over as well as it could as far as modern acting, where nonchalance becomes like a skill to use too. Like, I'm a normal person.
Yeah.
I mean, this woman has this wide eye open expression, but like at the same time, it's still conveying what we need, right? Which is the name of the film, the passion of Joan of Arc. Like, everything she says is slow, patient, like almost aggressively with conviction that she is behind God.
Yeah, she's definitely a noble person, you can tell. And something else about some of the scenes. So after this first trial scene, they send her into a kind of like a prison holding room before they have their next trial. She's then read a message by one of the English noblemen, one of the people that was persecuting her, and it's a letter from her king, right, the French king, and I can't really tell if they were trying to trick her with this letter. Were they?
I don't know. I don't want to say I've completely forgotten. I remember the letter coming in. I don't remember the text from it.
Yeah.
I remember them signing her adjuration.
Yeah.
And I think that the letter, it seemed, if I remember correctly, that it looked like it was falsified to say, like, I'm your king. You should adjure yourself. You know.
Okay.
Or abjure, I think is the word.
Well, I was getting that mixed up a little bit because later they have the paper that they want her to sign to excommunicate herself, and her being such a noble figure, she refused to sign this paper, and this becomes a big conflict for her just because, you know, she's such a religious figure.
Yeah.
And, you know, people in England were actually on her side.
Yeah. So, and we don't really get who the rioters at the end when she gets burnt by the stake. We don't know if they're French or English, but I mean, they're coming straight from this priory, you know, like where they're at. And I think that's the point, and you and I are pretty uneducated on the story of Joan of Arc, but you know what we know is she is a martyr, and she's like the patron saint of France now for what she did, which was, you know, stand against literally to the death the English people.
So she basically, after these two trial scenes happen, you know, she goes from the trial room into her prison room. They try to convince her that this paper signed by the French king is something that she should use to excommunicate herself, or, you know. Yeah,
everybody wants her to do it.
Yeah,
but she's so... And I guess, like, I thought it was forged, but I guess you could also say, like, maybe he does want her to as well. And just, like, everybody is kind of, like, you know, give up.
Yeah.
Like, don't say that this is your holy mission anymore, and she does anyways.
Yeah.
It's a respectful part of her.
So after these two scenes, she's adamant that she'll stay completely devout to her God, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so they think torturing her is going to be a thing. I don't know if it didn't translate well, but there's one line where they say "prepare the torture."
We laughed at that.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. Which, you know, it being almost 100 years old, there's definitely different things in the English language or in the French language that changed, I'm sure, and bounced around
100 years ago. If you watched a 1928 English film, like, some of the stuff would be hard.
Yeah.
That was another thing that maybe I felt was a loss for us. And I haven't seen a lot of other silent films, like I said, but there was some stuff that you could tell you were almost expected to lip read.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Like, and I got, like, the we's and the nons, like the yeses and nos stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, there were a couple times where I'm like, he's saying something that, like, is common enough that any French person would be like, oh, I see what he's saying.
Okay.
I
didn't really pick up on it, obviously, because I can't speak French, but I didn't really I mean, I guess I could have saw that.
Yeah,
They're
there was like
supposed
I
to,
think they were like, "Do you know the holy prayer?" And they just cut to Joan, and she, and that's like, so okay. She said yes, but then there were some that were a couple sentences long. It seemed like, it didn't take away from the movie really because the plot's kind of so simple.
Yeah.
And I actually liked some of those shots, like we mentioned earlier, the close-ups of the aggressive, like angry English holy people.
Yeah. I think some of the panning shots, and especially whenever the torture scene's happening, and the room spinning for her, I mean, mechanically, I could kind of figure how they would do that, but with those old cameras, and I feel like I'd imagine them being so fragile, that spinning shot where it's going 360 degrees around, I'm sure that was pretty intense.
I don't know what those cameras weighed, but I've seen videos of them on rails, and you're talking something like almost as big as this room. Yeah. So I mean the like boldness of everything they did in this is pretty crazy. So especially the overheads, like we're saying. Can you imagine? Yeah. Like I said, at least 400-pound thing that you like ride almost, and they're like, let's hang it from cables or build a rail.
You have to get it because you could see it was firm in those shots where it wasn't swaying or anything. So basically, after she this torture scene happens, she passes out and she's sick at this point. You can't really tell. We kind of thought
we're to assume she was like battling before this happened because she was this crazy warrior. Yeah. So that's my guess is she's probably just super fatigued or has some kind of battle infection from being on the field. Yeah. And that leads to I think like one of the biggest parts. And I think earlier it was funny. I think you said Joan. She finally signs the papers of abjuration. Yeah. And she signs them as Joan. The nice guy helps her sign them. And then also they're signed under a name.
One of the nice guys. At first, whenever he was talking to her in the dungeon, I thought that he was a nice guy, but as the movie got on, especially when he helped her sign it, I
think he wants her to live.
He could.
I think he's probably, I guess if you're thinking of a great leader during a war where you want your people to win, I don't know if he's French or if he's just, like a French apologist, she probably would be more to them. Not as a martyr.
Because if that is right, thinking that she wrote the wrong name, that explained the season when they threw him into the water. Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure that was him that got thrown into the water.
Yeah, and because I guess him getting thrown into the water after he says, "Oh no, she didn't sign Joan, she signed Joan." Yeah. I think it's him just making any last ditch effort to say like, this is somebody I respect, but I don't want them to die because I think they're worth more to us as not a martyr, just as a great warrior.
So after that, we start getting towards the end of the movie, and she's, they start to work out that she's not going to relent. Yeah, and it's basically a back and forth game of her saying she will, she won't, she will, she won't. And one of the last nice, like, real humane scenes in the movie is whenever the one of the priests that is on her side and probably the one that's most devout to her comes in and has a conversation with her before she burns at the stake. And I don't know if you remember that part, but
he's
the guy with
the kind of monk haircut.
Yeah. And that scene happened, and I think that made her feel like people are still on my side. What I'm doing is right. And then shortly after that scene, she says, "I reject."
I announced the signing of the paper. Yeah.
And then this is whenever we get all the just chaos is happening, and we get those overhead shots.
Yeah. So they take her up after he talks to her. She decides to renounce, and then when she renounced, they said, "Okay, well, like we said, we weren't gonna burn you if you signed that paper, so now we're gonna burn you." Yeah. They put her up, and as soon as she's up there, it's like I think the villagers see the smoke and all start running. Yeah. And that's when chaos ensues.
Yeah. And that's when those amazing shots from overhead, the people running into the castle.
There's that one great one where you have like guards marching up and you get the pan to it, and as soon as it pans, you're looking out these windows, and dude, I don't know how, because you know there's no CGI at this time, obviously, but it's like they got like 40 people just to in sync like collapse into the shot.
And also something you could tell that was different with the time, the period that we were in was there were a lot of, you could see amputees, and then also the people that were practicing.
Well, there was like a freak show.
Yeah, practicing
circus.
Yeah, there were people regularly doing sword, whatever you call that, putting swords into their entire stomach. There, you see, like, people with like half a body rolling around on carts.
Yeah, my take on that is that it's almost. And I wondered in my head for a second, is that where like media circus comes from? Is maybe all the way back in this film? Because I almost think it's like maybe a joke by the director to say like it was a complete circus there. It was a freak show, you know, one of those two, since that's what we saw on screen. Like basically the people turned into a complete circus because of what happened to Joan. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the like metaphor I got out of, like, because why else would you put a circus and circus people running to her burning?
Yeah. So after all this happens and she's inevitably burnt at the stake, you see that the crowd's reactions are everyone's sad. Mm-hmm. There's not anyone happy to see it happen. And shortly after this, we see a riot / war break out. I'm still not really sure if it was the Frenchmen attacking or if it was just the English revolting against their own.
Like they believed in her too.
Yeah. So overall, I was entertained with the movie. It was kind of hard to stay completely engaged. Besides the fact
out of our
you had to watch, but I can definitely understand that why it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like it just, I wonder. This is probably a little too off topic, but people talk about some of Tchaikovsky, the guy who made the Nutcracker, and how some of his early works had people like rioting in the streets, and I almost think of that for film in this, I don't know if people could even conceive not just having a straightforward shot of like somebody talking or doing something. Like the camera work I didn't think it was a thing that they did in this era.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising to see some of that camera work, which I've never seen a movie this old before. I did see the first film ever made, I think, and that one, I can't.
Talking like the moon or the train, the moon
one, and
I think that is a Tchaikovsky comparison because I think people, or not the moon, but the train. Like I said, is another one of the earliest.
I've not seen that
but
one.
That was like just a camera watching a train pass, and people were running out of the theater because they're like, "How does this train not smash us?"
Talking about.
And I think we're talking like 1890s, and that was much older.
Around the moon time.
But yeah, it's just gonna be mind blowing. It's mind blowing for me to watch some of the shot work in this. So I'm sure it's crazy for that era. You know, the 20s, you go see a picture show. And you get that kind of direction and thought behind the camera.
Yeah, I was definitely entertained with it, to say the least. But I think that's all we have for today. So I want to appreciate your all's viewing and thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the time.